Check, hey, hey. Check, check. Check, hey, hey. Check, check, hey, hey.
Testing. Testing.
Hey, I'm doing great. How about you? Awesome. Thank you. Happy Monday. Thank you for coming. Good. Yeah. They can tell. They can hear me say thank you for coming. I know. I'm waiting for the other one. Sorry. I got it. It's coming. It'll be great.
You guys want everyone to start making their way in a certain
I
direction?
will in a second. Just in a moment. They don't need to see me doing this. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for coming. We're going to be starting in just a moment. Thank you. All right. I can have you stand at the floor, and then you'll stand up first there. You're gonna people together. You'll tell me when.
No, I do appreciate you letting me be part of it.
Nice and close. That way we get you guys.
Stick on that side.
So much.
Is my hair look okay?
Issues. All right. You guys are good. Then I kill you for cultural mark. So. Wait, Joe. Come on. It's okay. Okay. May I have you walk and move over here? No. Yeah.
Can we get a story?
You want no judgment. Okay.
I was gonna wear my wife's heels.
Check a lot of boxes for this press conference.
Okay, you guys all ready?
Yep. Yeah. Started. Look, keep it short. It's cold.
All right, thank you everyone for coming out today. Crime is out of control in California, and we are here with representatives from our law enforcement community to send one simple message, that everyone, no matter where they live or who they are, deserve to feel safe in their community. With that in mind, I'd like to start our conference this morning with a moment of silence to remember the victims of so much violence that we have seen in recent days. Officers who were killed in the line of duty just doing their jobs. Victims of mass shootings that continue to plague our state. And Tyree Nichols in Memphis, who was a victim of horrendous brutality. Join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. The violence we've seen it's heart-wrenching. And I think we all stand here knowing that we can do better. We can do so much better. I do want to address right at the outset the terrible video that we've all seen out of Memphis. I think I speak for everyone here when I say that what happened to this young man was horrific. There is no excuse. It should have never happened. And the officers responsible must be brought to justice and held to account. But we also need to avoid the narrative by some who would seek to paint the entire law enforcement profession in the same light as those former officers in Memphis. Our officers in California, for example, are some of the most well-trained in the nation, and we hold them to a very high standard. They hold themselves to a very high standard. And they put their lives on the line each and every day to protect our communities. And far too often, they give their lives in that effort. Protecting the lives of these police officers and the citizens that they police is not mutually exclusive, and we can do better for both. We're joined today by representatives of the law enforcement community from throughout the state, but also from Riverside County, where tragically we have lost 2 deputies within weeks of each other. Deputy Darnell Calhoun and Deputy Isaiah Cordero. In what can only be described as a senseless act, they were gunned down while they were trying to protect our communities, while they were trying to keep our streets safe in a traffic stop, while they were trying to protect domestic violence victims to show up to help. I don't have to say it. We can do better. We can do better. And with that, I'd like to invite up my colleague in the State Assembly, Bill Asaley.
Thank you, Assemblyman Gallagher. Thank you, colleagues, and especially thank you, members of the Association of Riverside County Chiefs of Police and Sheriff, known as RCOPS, for traveling to Sacramento to be here with us today. We, as the Assembly Republicans, have a number of common sense pieces of legislation focused on restoring public safety. Today's legislative package we're announcing is part of the California promise we made to voters, a promise we intend to keep. I am especially motivated because my community in Riverside County has suffered tremendous tragedy. Recently, we had 2 of our sheriff's deputies murdered in the line of duty, Deputies Cordero and Calhoun. I attended both funerals, and there are no words to describe the sense of loss and sadness their family and our communities are feeling. Our Riverside County Sheriff's Office had not suffered a line of duty death in 2 decades. And then we lost 2 deputies within 2 weeks. That is not acceptable, and there must be an accounting of the policies that led to their murders. As a former deputy district attorney and federal prosecutor, I am focused on holding the soft on crime policies enacted within the last decade responsible for the erosion of our public safety. These policies, regardless of their purported good intentions, have had devastating consequences on the people of this great state. Under Gavin Newsom's leadership, California experienced 49 mass shootings in 2022, which doesn't even include the recent shootings in Monterey Park and Half Moon Bay. In 2021, California had 2,361 homicides, our deadliest year since 2007. 3/4 of these deaths were by firearms, and 3/4 of the victims were Black and Latino. These minority victims are the true disenfranchised members of our society, not the criminals rightfully sitting behind bars. The governor will blame guns while protecting the criminals who use those guns to commit crimes. We have plenty of gun laws on the books. What we're missing is sufficient enforcement and deterrence. We don't need more gun control, we need crime control. That is why this morning I introduced Assembly Bill 328, which will reinstate the 20 to life mandatory sentencing enhancement for anyone who uses a firearm in the course of a violent crime. AB 328 is simple, it makes sense, and it punishes criminals who use firearms to hurt others. Through AB 109, Prop 47, and Prop 57, California has effectively eliminated most punishment for for criminals. Elected leaders care more about releasing criminals than protecting victims. This is wrong, it's unethical, and frankly immoral. We must reverse these misguided policies and redirect the course of California back towards justice. We will hear about several other common sense bills today from my colleagues, but now I am proud and honored to introduce the Riverside Chief of Police, Larry Gonzalez. Chief Gonzalez is here as president of RCOPS. He is also joined by Corona Police Chief Bob Newman, as well as Chief Joe Del Giudice with the Bureau of Investigations for the Riverside County District Attorney's Office. Thank you, Chief.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Larry Gonzalez. I'm the Chief of Police of the Riverside Police Department. And I'm here representing, like Bill said, RCOPS, which is the Association of Riverside County Chiefs of Police and the Sheriff. For those of you who aren't familiar with RCOPS, we're a collaborative organization, and we're the heads of law enforcement county, which includes myself, the Sheriff Chad Bianco, the District Attorney Mike Hestron, and 20 other agency heads. I am proud of the numerous public safety bills being announced today as part of California Promise, which many of these legislators will speak about in a minute. We're extremely lucky in Riverside County to have such a unified partnership amongst law enforcement leaders, and a new key component of this partnership is our unwavering support for our newly elected Assemblyman for the 63rd District, Bill Essayli. Part of Bill's success, in my opinion, is grounded in his experience as a seasoned prosecutor, both locally and federally, for many years. During this time, he worked face-to-face with hundreds of officers and deputies from agencies throughout multiple jurisdictions. He got to know them and the challenges they face on the street. He's also been responsible for navigating the countless legislative changes over the past several years, many of which make it harder and harder to keep our community safe for both law enforcement and prosecutors. I'm happy to tell you that with support from our local elected officials, my officers don't have the same concerns as in other parts of the state. When I speak at community meetings and address Riverside residents about crime, I'm proud to tell them that our officers have the support of leaders like Assemblyman Essayli, Senator Roth, Senator Seriato, and others. I can also confidently tell our citizens that we simply don't have the same problems as some of our surrounding areas, due in large part of the commitment of our leaders to do all they can to prioritize rights of victims by holding criminals accountable. But we do not live in a vacuum, and when law enforcement isn't supported, no matter what jurisdiction, it has a negative impact in California. The past several years have brought many unique challenges over which in my 30 years in law enforcement have never encountered. We've faced a constant struggle to continue to provide key services to the community while striving to conform to the extremely high standards set by ourselves and the public. But despite these challenges, our officers continue to hold true to their values and their commitment to uphold the oath. I know I can speak for my fellow law enforcement leaders and members of RCOPS when I say as a county and as a region, we're in a great position to continue the good work done by our men and women in uniform every day to keep our residents safe. This will work and continue with the support of our community and our elected officials, but we need everyone to help carry a message to those whose uninformed views and policies are a hindrance in our mission. The numerous bills being announced today as part of the California Promise is a critical first step this year in returning some of the common sense balance to our laws. We know we must restore pre-Prop 47 felonies. We must increase penalties for transporting fentanyl. We have to be transparent with our early prisoner release data. And we've got to restore the 20 to life enhancement for those who use a firearm in the course of committing a violent felony, which Assemblyman Asali just discussed. Please stand united with us and make it clear to those in power that the safety should not be a luxury to few. Everyone deserves a safe neighborhood to live in, safe parks to play in, and safe schools to learn in. This is not achieved through soft on crime policies, weak laws and loopholes, and a criminal justice system seems only to seek justice for the criminals. Our state and local law enforcement agencies have the knowledge, experience, and dedicated men and women necessary to protect victims and prevent crime. By making your voices heard to our politicians, you can help give us that legislative support that is also necessary for us to do our job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief, for your words. As I said, it cannot be denied that crime is out of control in California. We are seeing an increase in petty thefts and retail thefts, but also in violent assaults. And we've heard some of the numbers that Assemblyman Asali laid out there. And when it comes to violent crime, we don't have a great record. According to the Gun Violence Archive, 49 mass shootings in California last year alone. We can do so much better. And as was said, as part of our California Promise, Republicans are bringing solutions to these issues, including to this issue of greater public safety and accountability for crime. And with that, I would like to introduce the new Vice Chair of the Assembly Public Safety Committee, Juan Alanis.
Thank you, Assemblyman Gallagher. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Juan Alanis. I represent the 22nd District of the Assembly. For those who don't know me, I've spent more than half of my life in law enforcement serving our communities. First off, I want to thank the chiefs and the sheriff and the DAs who have made their way here to Sacramento to help support us in presenting these bills. Also, I would like to join the law enforcement leaders in expressing my condolences to the Nichols family in Memphis, along with the city of Memphis. I would also like to ask everybody to remember that there are many in the law enforcement community that are serving honorably, that they care about their communities, and that they want to serve and protect their communities. So please keep that in mind. I know more than most of you the difficult time this is for the law enforcement community. Public safety in California is clearly broken. Crime in our state has gotten worse, not better. Attacks on law enforcement have gotten worse, not better. Safety in our neighborhoods, communities, workplace, and schools have gotten worse, not better. I have lost dear friends in the line of duty, some of whose names are etched across the street at the California Peace Officer Memorial. They served their communities and had to pay the ultimate sacrifice, just as the Riverside deputies have recently. All of us as leaders in our communities and in the state must do the same and must do more. We must quit pointing fingers at each other. We must welcome to the table discussions that involve real solutions to real public safety and criminal justice problems plaguing California. But most importantly, we must stop demonizing the overwhelming majority of good men and women who put on a uniform each day to protect and serve their communities and this state. It is imperative that we return to serious penalties for those who commit violent crimes. Criminal acts must have real consequences, especially criminals who prey upon vulnerable, law-abiding public. Proposition 47 is a failed experiment which has only catered to criminals here in California. I will introduce legislation today to repeal Proposition 47. But even if the majority stops my bill, we must have an honest discussion about providing real public solutions to California. We must end the war on cops and start fighting the root causes of a spiraling crime problem in our state. We have to make real progress on the mental health crisis, the drug crisis, the housing crisis. We must provide more funding and more opportunities for California's youth. We must create real choices for at-risk kids. Beyond the lowest common denominator, beyond poverty, beyond gangs, and beyond violence. I stand ready to work with my colleagues here today and with anyone across the aisle to have real discussions on public safety and our criminal justice system. As a career law enforcement officer, I have been on the street. I've seen the worst, and I have seen the best we can be as people. I believe we can work together to accomplish real and positive changes, to make our state safer and our system of justice fair and just for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And we will also have some more brief comments from members of our caucus who are working on this issue this year. First, we'll have Assemblymember Lori Davies.
Good afternoon. As we've unfortunately seen here recently, even California is not immune to gun violence epidemic that has become too common. For too long, the legislature has passed new regulations on law-abiding citizens rather than reform and restructure existing programs and protocols. That is why I've introduced AB 303, which will put in place statutory requirements for the Attorney General's office to share in any investigative notes and report it on individual currently on Armed Prohibited Person System, better known as APS. California has a backlog of 24,000 people on this database. These include individuals suffering from mental illness or people with criminal backgrounds that have unlawfully possessed weapons. My first thought is, why are we not adequately funding our gun violence prevention program to help law enforcement get illegal guns out of the hands of those that will most likely end up using them on law-abiding citizens? Talk about low-hanging fruit. While this sounds like common sense, unfortunately, it's not always been the case. A 2021 investigative report showed that 150 different law enforcement agencies had not received any type of assistance from the AG's office. Lastly, I look forward to working with my colleagues on increasing funding for mental health services, as well as increasing funding for the APS program so we can begin to eliminate the backlog of over 24,000 people awaiting investigation. If we are serious about getting illegal guns out of our community, we need to seriously go after the criminals using them in the first place. Thank you.
And next up we will have Assemblyman Trita.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trita, Assemblyman from California Assembly District. Like many people across the state, my constituents are concerned about rising crime. Theft, violent assault, and gun crime have become all too common around the state of California. That's why I introduced legislation to hold criminals accountable for the crime they commit and the state legislator accountable for promoting public safety. The first bill I introduced, AB 27, will close a dangerous loophole in the state law that allows criminals who commit felonies armed with a firearm to serve reduced sentences. Current law requires judges to drop the firearm-related sentences enhancement in most circumstances. AB 27 will hold criminals accountable, keep violent individuals behind bars, and provide judges with the discretion they need to deliver justice. I am also determined to hold the legislator accountable. For far too long, the state has passed bill that weaken our criminal justice system, such as Assembly Bill 109, which reduce penalty for host of felony offenses. My legislation would commission a comprehensive review of AB 109 and evaluate the impact of the legislative decade of serve on crime policies. I am committed to working with my colleagues to build a safe California for the people in my district and across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And next up, we will have Assemblymember Diane Dixon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us today on this very chilly day. But we have important messages for all. This morning, I introduced Assembly Bill 330, which will create a centralized website dedicated to providing easy access to resources and services available to victims of domestic violence. Standing up here today, I share my colleagues' belief, all of us believe, that California needs to focus, the state legislature needs to focus on reducing crime, and crime comes in many different forms. All Californians have a right to feel safe in our communities. Part of that solution includes ensuring that our hard-working men and women in law enforcement have the resources they need to protect our communities. AB 330 will provide a key resource to assist victims of domestic violence and anyone assisting them. A 2021 study conducted by UC San Diego revealed that 1 in 25 California adults experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence. That same year, the Public Policy Institute of California reported that aggravated assaults were classified as 67% of reported violent crimes. According to When Everyone Acts, Violence Ends, otherwise known as WEAVE, domestic violence does not discriminate against age, gender, sexual orientation, or economic status. It can be physical, emotional, financial, sexual, or technological. Sadly, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience some form of physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. What is especially alarming to me is that domestic violence is the most common for women between the ages of 18 and 24. AB 330 is needed because it will coordinate information into an easily accessible, centralized hub, internet hub, that should appear after a quick Google search. Specifically, this website will include educational resources for victims to better understand their rights and a list of local and statewide services for immediate assistance, including 24-hour counseling hotlines, emergency shelter information, and contact details for medical care services. Such a centralized website or point of information does not exist anywhere in our state. I am hopeful this website will help those who need it most. I look forward to continue working with law enforcement to ensure that our most vulnerable people, especially women and children, are protected and well served. Thank you very much.
And next we have Assemblymember Jim Patterson. Sorry, scratch that. He is not here right now. So we are going with Assemblymember Joe Patterson.
That was on purpose, I'm sure of it. Well, thanks for standing out here in the heat with us today. When former Governor Jerry Brown sold Proposition 57 to the public, it was that it was going to keep violent offenders, quote unquote, locked up. They also said that there would be a process to rehabilitate people. Now, neither of those things are happening. So what happens in the inmates can now receive parole hearings in order to be released, and that gives the district attorneys and law enforcement and victims an opportunity to testify or to give some input on why an individual should not be released. Unfortunately, that's not what the state is doing. The state is actually secretly releasing people back into the community and considering their terms to be fully fulfilled. And why is this a problem? In many cases, including a local one here, Smiley, with the mass shooting, that individual was released early in secret. Additionally, in Placer County, we had an inmate named Darnell Irby, who the board, his parole hearings on 2 separate occasions was denied parole. The state secretly released him anyways. He went on to murder a woman here in Sacramento and went on to dismember her body. And that's wrong. We can't allow that to happen. So I'm introducing legislation to make sure that district attorneys know in advance, just like in parole, that an inmate is going to be released and it's no longer a secret, and that also that the calculations are done and given on why the state is even coming up with these calculations. Because people are being released so early with no transparency onto how the state even came up with those calculations in the first place. And so our district attorney in Placer County, Morgan Geyer, wrote to the state after Darnell committed this murder asking, how did you calculate these credits? This person had a bad record in prison as well, so he wasn't rehabilitated, but the state continued to secretly release this person, and unfortunately it took a life. So we're going to solve that problem. Thank you.
See, that's why we have 2 Pattersons in the caucus now. Works pretty well. So next up, we have Assemblymember Josh Hoover.
Thank you, Leader Gallagher. Our message today is very simple. We need to restore accountability to our criminal justice system. And when you talk to people in your communities, when I talk to people in my communities, my retailers, my small businesses, they're being overwhelmed by rising theft crimes in this state. In fact, just last week, we had a member of the press get their car broken into on these very grounds and equipment stolen. And why are these things happening? It is because there are not appropriate consequences for these criminal actions. That is why I've introduced AB 75, which would allow increased penalties on serial theft offenders, people that commit the same crime over and over again, and yet are continuing to be met with a misdemeanor. This bill would allow us to charge greater penalties for serial theft offenses and crack down on this rising theft trend. We owe this to our small businesses, we owe this to our communities, and I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join us in helping us restore some common sense and some accountability to our criminal justice system. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, I have Assemblymember Kate Sanchez.
Good afternoon. Radical Sacramento policies are endangering our communities. My community in Riverside County recently lost 2 sheriff deputies in the line of duty, one of whom was slain by a violent third-strike felon who was permitted reduced bail. This allowed him to be released from custody, be out on the streets, and be able to commit this horrible crime. Progressive extremists continue pursuing legislation that caters to criminals but disregards the victims. Over the past few years, we've seen the legislature propose enacting zero bail, pass bills that end gang enhancements, disarm the police, and allow violent criminals to cut their sentences short. This is nothing short of unacceptable. We need to fight against these backward measures and put forward common sense legislation that will protect our communities and help support crime victims. That's why I introduced AB 88, which will ensure crime victims are able to meaningfully participate in important court proceedings. There are few more important voices in our justice system than those of the crime victims. We need to ensure that they are being heard. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everyone for being here this morning on this very important issue, as we know that crime is plaguing our state. And Republicans are here to say we have solutions. We have proactive solutions to help solve this crime problem in California. And as it was said, we want to work across the aisle. And we believe that we have a lot of bipartisan support for these reasonable reforms that will help ensure that there's accountability for crime, to better get on top of gun violence. I mean, think about this for a second. Just a few years ago, the majority in this House got rid of the gun enhancement for crime. What kind of message does that send? When you're telling people there will be no additional punishment for using guns in the commission of a crime. We would restore that. When we talk about the APPS program, dangerous people who are on our streets right now, they shouldn't have guns. They're not supposed to have guns, but they have them. The mass shooter just blocks from this Capitol who shot up our community. He got out of prison. He was supposed to be doing 10 years. He only did 4 because of the terrible policies that we're talking about, where CDCR is releasing people and granting automatic credits, not because they're showing they're rehabilitated, but automatic credits. Back out on the street using an illegal gun to kill innocent people in our city. We need to stop this. If we want to truly get on top of gun violence in our communities, then we need to be willing to make the reforms that are necessary to do it, to bring accountability to this crime problem. I don't want to see another mass shooting. 49 last year. When I was a kid, I was 11 years old, we had the Lyndhurst High School shooting. It's etched in my memory. Just miles from my home is where that happened. But it was the only one that happened that year. Now we have 49 a year. It's unacceptable. Those are not good stats. And if we truly want to get to the bottom of this, we have to get to the bottom of the criminal element in our communities. We have to have accountability. We have to do better at intervening and getting people before they get to this place. And as it was said, the APPS program is pretty low-hanging fruit with 24,000 people out there on the streets who shouldn't have guns in the first place. Let's finally do something about it. I believe we'll have bipartisan support for these reasonable solutions. Let's hope that the Public Safety Committee is going to actually hear them and give them the time that they deserve and pass them and move them forward. Bipartisan solutions to solve our crime problem in this state. We will continue to work very hard on that, and I would be happy to answer any questions that people may have. Yes, Eitan. I will let my colleague Bill Asaley answer that question since it's his bill.
Yeah, it's in the commission of a violent crime. So it's 10 years if you just have the gun, it's 20 years if you use the gun, and it's 25 to life if you hurt someone with the gun. Pretty simple. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Yes. I'm pretty optimistic. I mean, I think you saw last year there were bills, for example, by Jackie Irwin, Democrat from Ventura County, to get out the retail theft and some of the other, the rampant theft that we've seen in this state. Last year, Assemblymember Rudy Salas had bills to help reform Proposition 47 and other these same reforms that we're talking about. We've seen Democrats actually introduce bills that didn't get out of Public Safety Committee. That's frustrating. So I am optimistic that we have support on the other side of the aisle. I think there's a lot of newer members who are coming out of local government who are seeing these same problems in their communities. They want to see something done about it. So I'm actually really optimistic that we'll have bipartisan support. And like I said, we're willing to work with anyone to truly get on top of this issue. Okay. Well, if no further questions, we'll have people here. If people want to do individual interviews with folks, we have some great members of our law enforcement community here with us today. But thank you for coming out. And we're looking forward to working hard on this issue and getting something done this year in the legislature. Thank you.